Okay, so Jonathan and Charlotte, first time I believe we've got two people in the same screen now on this podcast. So there's a first for that. You guys have got an incredible story, both individual stories that are actually quite different from one another. And I think it'd be really useful just to kick it off by just seeing how you got to where you are now, in what you're doing with wellness theory and all the incredible life-changing work that you're doing with all your members around the world. So I don't know who wants to kick it off. Maybe
start.
Yeah, start with Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely. So just in a nutshell, what Wellness Theory is a coaching platform where we help people to calm a racing mind, feel in control of their emotions, and essentially build a healthy, meaningful life. Something that a lot of people really struggle with is stress. So we really attack wellness from a stress relief perspective. It's one of the biggest issues that's happening around the world right now, and it's something we've been passionate about for a very long time. And we address stress on a mental, physical, and emotional level, which a lot of times is not the case. And we have this one-dimensional way of thinking about stress. We just have to manage it and release it, and that's it. That's where the buck stops. But reality shows, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening be able to recognize that actually sometimes it's not as simple as it sounds to just suddenly get one thing on track. And that's really what Wellness Theory was born out of, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been through our own kind of challenges, trials, and stresses over the years, and a lot of what we do pulls from our own experience, but also obviously understanding what we went through, and then obviously learning more about that, the in-depths of why it was happening, why it was showing up, and how to kind of flip the switch on it as well. For me, I grew up in a household where I was kind of taught subconsciously to keep my emotions in, it was not to express myself as a man. My only emotions are meant to show are like anger, aggression, sarcasm, that type of stuff. But showing anything else is whatever comes up, anything happens, you be a man about it, you lock it away, you crack on with things. And that kind of mentality I took obviously through my childhood into my teens, into my working life, where I never learned really how to fully express my emotion. Never really learned what emotions were. And that had a kind of a very big detrimental effect on my health, and how I kind of approached dealing with people, communicating, and just understanding what was happening around me. And I didn't really get it. So my concept was, okay, I don't need to show anything. I just, crack on with it. And then I know what's right. So people should follow me, should do what I say first time round, and I'm right. And if that didn't happen, I'd get very angry, I'd snap, I'd basically stress out over things that didn't really matter. But I didn't realize that at the time. And I kept stressing myself out and kept compounding that effect over weeks, over months. And I used to escape that stress and that feeling through training ridiculous amount, like literally sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours a day, sometimes 6, 7 days a week. I'd be so strict with what I was eating. I thought, okay, I'm not going to drink. I don't smoke. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to train every day. I'm going to sacrifice my social life, my relationships, by eating clean and healthy and not going out and going to restaurants. And I thought that was good because I was in the health and wellness industry. So that's what I had to do. And that was kind of my form of escapism, where is to get away from this anger, the stress, and the people and the things that were causing that. I would kind of dive deep into that world, which became a very unhealthy obsession for me. And that added more stress on to the stress I was causing myself through work and socializing as well. And it came to a head where I started to experience pain and tension. And it showed up quite minimal at first. And I just thought it was, because I was training so much, it was that training pain that you always experience. And then it got to the point where I realized I was living in pain. And it took me a while to realize that it wasn't just training, there was something else going on. But I didn't realize I was causing that pain through the stress I was causing myself. And I got to the point where I started to develop chronic pain in my back, and that chronic pain started to get intense to the point where it affected my vision, it affected my training. I remember one point it got so bad I got these big headaches, and I started to get blurry vision, and I thought, okay, this definitely isn't right. This should not be happening. But me being me at the time, my ego took away. Go, no, I don't need to worry about this. I'll just, a few days of sleep, a couple of days off the gym, I'll be fine. So I kept going through this pain for like 4 years. I experienced chronic pain for 4 years, just got worse and worse and worse. And I got to the point where it took that much suffering for me to realize that, okay, there's something deep going on here. Life shouldn't be this hard. Like, I shouldn't be experiencing this much pain all the time. So this is when I started to ask myself different questions. I literally took a complete break off the gym. I was like off for 8 months. No gym, no training. I started to just question why I was experiencing what I was experiencing, tried every physical fix under the sun, injections, physio, chiropractor, the whole lot, and nothing was working. It only took for me to start becoming more open-minded to different approaches, and started to think, okay, it's not just training and nutrition I need to look at, it's my mental health, it's my emotional health. And that's when I started to look at my emotions and what I was keeping locked away, and I started to get the help I was looking for and that I needed to understand what I was feeling. And when I started to realize that and started to tap into the holistic side of wellness, and started to retrain how I breathe, my breathing, started to calm my nervous system down, started to meditate, started to kind of just understand what I was feeling and how I was feeling, that's when that pain started to shift, and it started to dissipate and get rid of. And then I realized now that pain was a signal my body was telling me there's a big disconnect between what's going on in your head, what's going on in your body, and what's going on in your heart, and there's a misalignment. When I started to align that by connecting mind and body and then understanding how I was feeling, my pain completely went after, I think, 2 weeks of real focused holistic work on breath work, meditation, and just kind of resolving emotions that I was blocking for a very long time. And then once that happens, and then I started to make that connection, think, okay, there's more to health than just training and eating. You've got to have that balance of mental, physical, emotional, and energetic, because that's how we operate as a human being. So now that's kind of what we do now with everything we do, from a physical, mental, emotional. I've taken that experience, put it into what we do with wellness theory, to help people to realize that what their body's telling them is not a bad thing. It's just a signal, and you've got to listen to that. When you listen to it and become aware of it, that's half the battle, and that's when things start to really take hold and change.
Oh, there's a lot there. So before you go, Charlotte, just to probe on a few things there. What was your trigger moment to think I need to something needs to change it? Because obviously people, we talk about the physical being the vehicle, but at the same time you take it to the extreme, and then it's suddenly the physical is the crutch.
Yeah,
it's no longer giving you just the benefit. It's becoming actually a negative. You're doing as much as you were doing, and it becoming a very restrictive lifestyle. What was your trigger to think, I can't handle this pain anymore? Something's got to be, I've got to change what I'm doing here. When you went on that journey, what was some of the things that came up? Like, what were the emotions that you said you've been repressing? And talk us through that. What are the practicalities of how this actually unfolded?
Yeah, well, obviously the biggest thing for me was when I started to kind of get blurred vision. That was a big sign. It was like, what the hell is going on here? And then the fact that I went down from training 6-7 days a week to 2 days a week if I was lucky. And my recovery time was like crazy long, and I wasn't recovering really. Obviously I wasn't sleeping, I was exhausted. So all these things came to a head where I just got sick of feeling like this, tired all the time, got sick of feeling in pain. And they just stopped one day and go, why, like, what's going on? This should not be this hard. And I think the pain just got to such a point, the suffering got to that tipping point where I think something needs to change now. And what I realize now, but I didn't know then, that this pain was coming from a lot of trapped and unresolved emotional and mental issues from, again, coming through from childhood, that I was experienced that I was, one of the things was obviously don't show emotions. I was never told don't show emotions, but I'll pick that up from people around me, especially from my dad as well. Being a man is to hold on to those emotions, don't show, because showing emotional or emotions, anything, or expressing emotions as a sign of weakness. So I kept everything in, and that developed into me only being able to understand and show really one emotion, my predominant emotion, which is anger. That was my kind of go-to. I got nicknamed the Hulk in my first 10 years of my career, because I would snap so quickly. I would change very, very quickly from being calm, I'd say calm as I could be at that time, to literally snapping for no reason at all, shouting, being angry, swearing, all these things coming out. And I didn't really tie in at the point that what was happening. And that was always my go-to emotion. And when I realized I was repressing a lot what was going on, so anytime if there was conflict, if someone done something or said something that annoyed me, I would bottle it up, because I felt that if I let it out, something bad would happen. And then I would keep bottling it up, and then eventually it would come out in an unhealthy way. And when that happens, I'd feel better for a little while, and then I'll bottle it up again, because I need to kind of put this monster back in this cage again, and I'd keep bottling it up. And then it took me a while to realize this anger was coming from a place of, well, just repression, is not expressing myself, not talking about how I felt, not even understanding how I felt. I couldn't even name most of the emotions I was experiencing at the time, except for anger. Anger was the only thing I knew 100% what I was feeling, because it was my constant. It was my one constant at that time. So when I started to express myself more and just reflect and talk about what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, that anger started to subside. It started to reduce. The intensity started to reduce. So that was kind of a big aha moment for me, and that big light bulb moment. Whereas doesn't matter if I'm a man or whatever I am, I'm allowed to express my emotions. I'm allowed to express myself, because all that emotion I was holding on to started building up in my body. My body was telling me this, but I wasn't listening to it. I was telling me this through pain, through tension, through obviously screwing with my vision. All these things were happening, but I wasn't listening to it. It took me a long, long time to listen. And when I started to listen, that's when my body started to calm down, because it was happy that I was paying attention to it. And I started paying attention by getting into breath work, retraining how I was breathing, to be able to calm my nervous system down, to understand what thoughts were going through my head, what emotions I was feeling.
So how did you express them then? You said you've started expressing your emotions. How were you doing that? Was it with people? Were you and Charlotte together this time?
We knew each other, but
we came to heads many times working together.
So we used to work together in a kind of corporate fitness space in the UAE, and we were both working in the same club, so same fitness center, and Jonathan had his way of dealing with the team, and I had my way of dealing with the team, and Jonathan was trying to express how he felt when he was in that unresourceful space to the team, and he realized it wasn't really getting in the results that he was after. So that's when you started really expressing yourself to yourself. That was really the first thing that I observed. It was just that paying attention and you actually becoming aware of it. That was the first. The
awareness was the key. That was the key, because like I say, you don't, until you recognize the problem, you can't solve the problem. So my first part was recognizing it, accepting it, and becoming aware of it. And I think one of the things that kind of triggered me to start thinking about things differently was when working with Charlotte. Like I said, I had my way of doing things and she had her way of doing things. And I realized one day that her way of doing things was eliciting a quicker result while people were not afraid of her. Whereas my way of doing things was still getting the same result, took a little bit longer, but people were scared of me.
And you were suffering.
And I was suffering. So it's like, okay, that was a kind of a trigger moment. Okay, what's going on here? It was my first kind of sense of, there's an easier way, there's a different way. And that's when I started to open up to the idea of being open-minded to different approaches. And then I started reading more about the mind, about the emotions, and I started to try and connect the dots and practice things myself, which did yield a result for me. And it was then when I started to, because at the time I was following someone called Rowan Sharma, and there was a a 5-day immersive course that was happening close by to where we were living at the time in the Middle East. And I enrolled on that because it's something I was always wanted to do. And that was kind of my big shift, because I was immersed in that environment, in that setting of self-development, of self-healing for 5 days straight. And that's when my big shift happened. And I came out of that with pretty much who I wanted to be, what I wanted in life became more aligned. And that's when my anger just kind of disappeared. And I entered this calm, relaxed state, and which I've stayed in for about 90% since then. The 10% comes up is when I notice when I'm hungry or tired, and the hangry monster comes out again. But I think that's normal with most people.
Yeah, interesting. I think the awareness factor is such an overlooked thing. People don't want to be aware of their thoughts. No. They'd rather suppress it with whatever crutch. For you, it was training. For others, it may be food and Netflix or whatever the different options are. And it takes a lot to admit that. So, fair play to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Charlotte, so you guys knew each other a lot. I'm assuming you weren't together at the time.
Yeah, so we weren't together. So I'll kind of pick up my story really where
go for it. Yeah,
where Jonathan left off, because he was obviously on his own journey, and on the flip side, in my own little world, I was kind of going through my own stuff too. Now, we knew each other actually when we was both working in the UK. We knew each other like kind of in passing, colleagues working in different facilities and things like that. And it was really just on the off chance that he ended up reaching out to me saying, hey, there's a job going in Abu Dhabi. Is it something you'd be interested in? And I was like, okay, all right, cool. Let's explore it and see where it takes us. And it ended up taking me to Abu Dhabi, where I have obviously experienced my own aha moments and wake up calls. So I was obviously also in that fitness space, in working in gyms, started as a personal trainer, into fitness management, into more senior programming roles and things like that. But as I was kind of climbing that ladder, as it were, there was this thing inside of me it was awesome, right? Like, to everybody else on the outside, it's like you live in the sun, the sea, the sand, you got the job, you got decent salary. I was leading multiple teams, I was flying to different countries across the GCC, and all is good, like to the outside world. But actually what was going on with me was that I, in a similar way to Jonathan, had suppressed a lot of issues. And I think sometimes it's easy to overlook stress, and we sometimes see stress as, I'm stressed out because something happened at work today, or because my boss did this, or because my kids are doing whatever. But often stress is not the result of those things that we see on the surface level. It's often a result of things that we've experienced in the past. That can be trauma, it can just be uncomfortable situations, it can be whatever it is to the individual. That stress is often a symptom of something else that's going on under the surface. And for me, I didn't know that, right? I didn't know that. And my stress started to reveal itself in negative thinking, with emotional eating, with really just complete self-neglect, in all honesty. And that got me to a point where I was behind closed doors, I was spiraling. I was like pretty much down and out. I was ready to just quit, and I was done. I was down and out. And at that point I was like, how can that be? There was just this question. It's like, how can that be? I've done everything I'm supposed to do, right? I'd got the job, etc. I was, like I said, to the outside world, all is good. But it's like, how is this possible? There's something missing. There's clearly something that I'm not getting. And that was the thing in that moment where I was just down and out, where I was like, no, there's a missing piece to the puzzle. And that was when my healing journey started, of really starting to understand, okay, well, what is this? Why am I having these thoughts? Why am I having these feelings about myself, about the world around me? Like, what does this mean? So I started to explore that. Later, obviously realizing it's a result of obviously past experience that have brought me to that moment. But I think one of the key things for me is that a lot of people go through this, but they do it quietly, and they do it in silence, and they don't mention it. And that becomes a problem, because all that does is it pushes things down even more. We neglect it. We can separate ourselves from it. Like you said there, Akash, beautifully, is that, it takes a lot for somebody to actually admit that stuff to themselves, or to see their own thoughts. It does. It takes courage, right? It's scary for some people. And sometimes people feel ashamed of that, and they don't want to speak about it. And I think it's no secret that suicide is the highest I think it's ever been. And it's all as a result, we believe, of us becoming so disconnected from ourselves. Yeah, there's a lot of conversation right now about how disconnection in society, but it's the disconnection from ourselves that I think causes the biggest concern. And it was obviously on both of our journeys, kind of both going through our own healing, that we both started to recognize what are some of these missing links and missing pieces of the puzzle. And that's really where wellness theory was born.
What were some of your root causes, Charlotte? You mentioned that you had a few demons. What were some of your root causes that, despite having everything externally, you felt like something was missing in life? What was it?
Yeah, well, the thing that was missing in life was deep connection specifically to what I later learned, to myself.
What does that What does that mean? What was the disconnection? Yeah.
So when you're going through something like that, there's a lot of unanswered questions. So at the time I wouldn't have been able to tell you that, right? So now in hindsight, when I've actually taken that courage and looked and been like, okay, where does this stem from? The root is at past experiences, right? It's about neglect, it's about alcohol, being a part of the household, things like that end up creating these patterns inside of us that it's much easier to not have the courage to face whatever emotions we've been experiencing and push it away, right? So the missing piece is stop pushing it away, welcome it in so that you can actually then do something with it.
Okay, and how did you approach that? What was, if you don't mind sharing, what was some of the, you mentioned the alcohol, what was your muck? We call it muck, that bubbles under the surface that forces people to use crutches. What was your muck, if you don't mind sharing?
So really, like I said, it is like just being exposed to things you're not supposed to be exposed to.
Okay.
When you're a kid.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, I know for me, one of the big things that I was exposed to as a child that I don't talk about a lot, but is when I saw my dad hit my mum for the first and last time. That held with me for many years and created a big emotional blockage as I was growing up. And I remember my kind of whole thing growing up was about, again, repressing those emotions and being strong for people around me. And that feeling of strength came at a cost of, okay, I can't show emotion because I've got to stay strong. And I kept bottling it down. And I could feel that heaviness hold in my body. And when I'm in the body, I literally, my joints, my muscles, everything, I always just felt heavy, especially when something triggered that emotion again, when I saw people around me just being horrible to each other, or there's violence around me, anything like that. I just remember that sense of kind of strength trying to come, okay, got to be strong, keep those emotions down, don't show anything. And that heaviness kept coming up. And I think one of my crutches based on anytime I felt like that, is same as feeling anger, I would go and kill myself in the gym. I would literally go and put myself through an intense workout, which was the worst thing I could have done because I was adding more stress onto my body. And then I just created that vicious cycle again because I was stressed and I added more into my body. I was too tired and exhausted to try and suppress or kind of keep those emotions down again, and they kept bubbling to the surface. So eventually it was like a volcano. Eventually, at some point, it's going to explode, and then it calms down for a while, and then it explodes again. That's what was happening with me on when it comes to that point of view.
What we do is we create a form of refuge, right? Mm-hmm. For Jonathan, it was in the gym, right? That was his place where he could create, where he can be the version of himself he was being, right? To let out that anger or frustration. For me, it was creating this world around me in my own thoughts of, right, okay, I'll work, right? I'll throw myself into the work scenario. And that then creates this, okay, well, if everything's going well, that's fantastic. And so for me, it was like, that was the external, but it was my thinking about work that kind of kept me safe in a way, right? But the thing is, your emotions don't let you just stay in that safe space, that refuge that you create. It doesn't let you just stay in the gym. It doesn't let you just stay buried in your work. It doesn't allow you to do that, because your body is always talking to you. Your emotions are always going to surface at some point when you're ready to deal with them. Obviously, our subconscious will protect certain emotions and experiences to protect us. But for a lot of people, they end up getting to a certain point in their life and they question, right? It's like, why am I here? or they get to a point, it's like, oh, I've been on this hamster wheel my whole life, and I'm just realizing actually this is not even who I am. It's not what I want to be doing. And that is often when people start to get these wake up calls in the sense of just looking inward, creating that deeper connection with themselves. And what I mean by deeper connection with self is recognizing what emotions are coming up, what thoughts, what feelings, what is your body trying to tell you in terms of pain, like Jonathan experienced, because those are all signals and reflections back to you as to things that maybe need your attention. Because if we don't and we ignore them, the stress will just build and build and build. You've probably heard things like, we keep repeating the same patterns until it really hits us in the face, right? It's like you'll go from one relationship, end that one because it wasn't good, go to another one, oh, same problems there, same problems there, same problems there, and it ends up becoming just so tiring, or it ends up actually becoming more escalated, whatever the life situation is, that then you have to address it. And that's usually when people are at that stress point where they kind of get to their breaking point, and not wanting to end it all, but they get to that breaking point where it's enough's enough. It's time for change.
What action did you take to break your pattern? Was it because you said your career and your work was your sort of crutch and your refuge? How did you take action on it? Like Jonathan decided to go from living in the gym to taking a break from it. What was your thing?
Yeah, so for me, it was community. It was seeking help, right? So it was me getting community to help me understand what was going on for me. So at that time, like I said to you, like it was about building a refuge for me, like kind of internally, yes, work, but also my thoughts about work, as in, well, if I'm doing this and I'm doing that, then I'm doing everything right. But there was conflicting thoughts going on as to, okay, well, what's this all about then? If that's all there is to life, in a sense, then that was confusing for me, which was causing that conflict and that suffering. But having somebody, working with somebody else or with a community that can help you see that, okay, not all of your thoughts about things are real, not all of your beliefs and things that you've modeled have to be the truth. And when you start to dig into those things, it then becomes very easy to start to recognize how we got to where we got to. And then for me personally, it was about then starting to learn and unpack, okay, well, what are those things that do need to be healed? What does need to be addressed? Right. So, okay, now I can think about it objectively, but what about connecting to the emotions and actually resolving any underlying emotions that needed to be let go of at the time?
And how do you let go and resolve these things? And there's
so many ways.
Talk us through some of the ones that some of the strategies that you use most commonly with people. Yeah, because I think this is a big thing. So one thing is identifying it. The next thing is actually letting go of it. Because otherwise you can get caught in just thinking about that event. You mentioned you saw things you shouldn't have seen it as a child. You could have just been left in a hamster wheel of just seeing that over and over again. And now the awareness is actually doing you harm just knowing it. So what do you do then to let go?
Well, again, it depends on the person and what they resonate with, because there's lots of different entry points. So for some people, it will be a case of, first of all, having the courage to actually accept what's going on. Because something else that's quite common is that people will come with a presenting problem, like I'm super stressed out because of my kids, or because I'm not getting this result that I want, or something like that, or at work or something. And then actually when you dig deeper, there's other stuff going on, and it's if that person is willing to see that will depend on where you meet them. I hope that makes sense. So basically we have what we call a stress pyramid, right? So at the top of the pyramid, we've got life, what's happened on that life level, like we just said, things like something's happening at work or with family and this kind of stuff. Then we have the health level, okay, which we'll tap into in a second. Then we have the root level. The root level is often where those traumas sit, where our alignment of who it is we are sits, our belief systems, our core values and the things that are driving us really sit. And we work with clients on the health level and on a root level. We definitely help people to have strategies in their life to deal with the stuff that's coming up at work and with family and this kind of stuff. But what we help people do is release emotion, old patterns, when it comes to physical patterns, emotional patterns and mental patterns. We help them either at a health level and a root level, depending on where they are. Do you want to mention their health?
Yeah, so the health level is focusing on those, what we kind of use as the 8 areas of wellness. So these are what we call our external kind of healing solutions. So we do, obviously, breathwork meditation is one of them. We're helping people to obviously retrain their breathing, understand and connect with deeper with themselves through breathwork and meditation. Second one is nutrition and hydration, obviously, and to understand the importance of what they're putting into their body and how it affects everything, every system in the body. Third one is movement. So again, movement is the key to life. It's what helps keep everything flowing, everything functioning. So movement is very key, and mindful movement more specifically, as opposed to what most people do is very unmindfully. And then from there, we do qualitative thinking. Is the fourth one we look at. So what are the thoughts are going through it, and not getting rid of those myths of you have to think positively all the time if you want to be in a healthy space, which you don't. And the fifth one is emotions. So again, we deep down into emotional intelligence, emotional resiliency, understanding emotions, what they mean, and getting people to understand that emotions are not neither good or bad. They just either make you feel very low or like a high vibrational. So it's understanding where you are on that emotional spectrum as well, and how to move between them. Also from there, sleep, a huge one of probably the biggest and easiest wins for most people. Once they get that right, because it has such a huge positive effect on every single system of our body when we get that right. Energy is number 7 on our 8, and then number 8 is action taken. And the reason 8 is because the first 7, you can learn about them, you can know everything there is to know about them, but if you're not taking action on them, you're still suffering. Like you said, you bring the awareness up, you bring that level of awareness, but then you've got to take action on it. Otherwise, you're going to keep suffering. And that's the worst kind of suffering, because you know, but you're not doing anything about it.
So to really like answer your question about like how do we help people let go, it's the reality is it depends where they come in, but anybody that works with us, the health level must be addressed. We need to have a full picture of what's going on in all of those areas, because then we know if there's key concepts and key fundamentals that people just need to be aware of, and they can immediately feel massive relief. Sometimes just recognizing what emotions you're feeling is enough to get through whatever some people need to get through. It's when we get to that root level where we tap into those deeper rooted issues, and that's when we use things like timeline paradigm techniques, which is really like an interactive meditation combined with then some breathwork elements as well. That's really the main tool that we use because it's so powerful, and it's
what is it?
Really
just
helps.
In like 30 seconds, what is timeline? Is it timeline paradigm?
Timeline paradigm techniques.
Okay, I've never heard of that. Yeah.
Okay, so timeline paradigm techniques is born out of NLP, so using linguistics and working with the subconscious. And what we would do is it's essentially like a meditation that you're being guided on, but then somebody who is also helping you address certain issues along at the same time. We combine that then with some very powerful breath work that then helps somebody to release it on a physical level, as well as on an energetic level, emotional level, and psyche level. And when we do that, we're able to discharge that emotion. So, and when I say discharge emotion, it's really the negative emotion, the heavy stuff that we want to let go of, because ultimately that's influencing our patterns today, even if there's something in our psyche or in our past that's from a long time ago, it will be affecting that also. So it depends on the person, but that's our main go-to tool.
I've not heard of that, so I've learned something new there. So that's awesome. What's some of the other ones? Have you got like 2 other ones that you use with people, or is this your sort of main strategy for letting go of emotion?
That's the main one, but it's a lot about at the root level of this pyramid. What we're talking about is really looking into the history. What have we learned? What have we conditioned? Because only when we're aware of that can we start to change that. So we also can use hypnosis. Sometimes we only use breath work with some clients as well. So yeah, there'll be 2 others.
Yeah, amazing. One thing you mentioned earlier is you touched on suicide, and I don't know how much did you guys deal with people who've considered suicide or
suicidal ideation, which is the idea of it. But on the not on the clinical end of the spectrum, because we need to understand that there's certain levels of support that certain people need at certain points. We don't necessarily work with somebody. If somebody comes to us and tells us they're suicidal, clinically depressed, we are not qualified to work with them, and we would refer them on to therapists, psychotherapists, and so on. So that really comes from my personal experience of suicidal ideation. So
let's touch on that. And the reason why I ask is, on a personal note, I've known of a friend of mine actually committed suicide last week, and my wife's friend's long-term girlfriend committed suicide 2 weeks ago. So it's like just come out of nowhere that I've for the first time in my life, I've known people who've taken their own life.
Mm-hmm.
So and I did a video in our community about it, and the whole concept of not suffering in silence, connecting, sharing. And so I'd love to hear some thoughts on practical strategies for people who may be suffering with suicidal ideation, because that's where it all sort of starts, right? Before you go further down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How do you work with people who are ideating around that? Because I think it's something no one really admits. People who might be listening to this, there may be some people who are considering various steps here, but talk to these people now, and even also from a potential from a supportive element, like what are some signs, what are some things you can do to help your friends and family who may be going through this sort of thought pattern.
So I actually think, and this is really opinion more than anything else, is that it can actually be a lot harder for the people that it comes to as a shock to, versus the people that have concerns about a family member or somebody that's in their sphere already. Because sometimes suicide comes as a complete shock and it's the person you would never have guessed, and sometimes it's people that have actually really been having a cry for help as well at the same time, through maybe trying to connect but not really knowing how to. So the thing I would say to somebody that maybe is listening to this, who is actually thinking about it for themselves, is it's the connection that is going to be the most important thing. Even if you don't reach out to somebody and tell them everything's going on in your head, being around people is essential. And when I say people, not just anybody, but being with somebody, if possible, that you can have a sense of closeness to. What's happening is that the system has gone completely into survival mode, right? And that might sound counterintuitive because survival mode means we survive, right? But actually survival mode is we're going to try everything we possibly can to survive. And if I don't feel like I can, I'm done. So that intelligent part of the brain switches off, or that critical thinking part of the brain, better term, switches off, and then you're just overcome by emotion, right? So that connection becomes the most important thing. So if possible, being around people and community. Well, the first thing you asked us when we hopped on today is like, what's the community like here? Because community is so important. It's essential. But that being said, that can be a hard thing, right? And I know I might be sounding a bit contradictory here, but there might be somebody listening to this that thinks, no, I can do that. I can reach out to somebody. I don't have to tell anything to them. I just can sit with them and just be with them. That's it. But just being around them will take that ease off. But on the other side, that might be somebody's worst nightmare, right? That might be a really scary thought when you're in that space. So the most important thing then to do is find a way to soothe yourself. Ideally, that is healthy, not alcohol, drugs, and things like that, but finding a way to self-soothe, finding a way to calm the body. That can be a cold shower. That can be something like breath, simple breathing, literally 5 in, 5 out, something that's going to get you in a rhythm. Music can be extremely powerful as well. Those are what I would say kind of the 3 go-to things that I would suggest for anybody who's experiencing that, but it needs to be leading towards having that step of just letting someone know that maybe you're struggling right now.
How do you develop that courage? Towards that. Because that's the hardest thing, is saying
that's when you're soothing. That's when you're soothing your own self. That's when you're leaning into activities that will help you soothe yourself. because to tell somebody, okay, journal on how you feel or connect with your emotions, that's the last thing somebody wants to do when they're in that space. They're already connected to their emotions on some level. And they don't want to go there. So having something that's going to be soothing, something that's going to be calming, is essentially creating that safe space around you, so that unfortunately, you know, the worst doesn't have to happen. But the other side of the coin there is the people that are on the other side of it, people that then know somebody in their space like yourself that has recently lost someone. Now obviously I don't know for you whether it was something, was it a shock, can I ask?
Yeah, total shock. Yeah.
So this is where we as a society need to start becoming more aware of checking in. And I know that sounds so simple, but sometimes it's the people you least expect, and just reaching out and not even saying like, how are you, or pushing a conversation. It's just reaching out to loved ones and people you care about and just saying, hey, just checking in on you. You crossed my mind. Something like that could be the change the game. It really could be. Now, I'm not saying that's all the answers. That's obviously just our take, but I think they're a powerful place to start.
From a root cause perspective, what would you say is the biggest thing you deal with if you had to theme it? If you had to theme these root causes that you experience and you deal with, what seems to always come up or comes up a lot of the times?
Childhood issues. It always comes back
to childhood issues.
Always comes back to the attachments that we've formed in early life and how then we relate to the world as a result. It will always come back to that on some level.
And what sort of examples of childhood issues? Is it my parents didn't give me the attention I deserve, or parents splitting up, or bullying, or what are the things that keep
that's just the way it's manifested, right? So those are just the experiences. The root cause is actually what's happened to that child in those scenarios. For example, have they been left to their own devices and they've just learned that they have to figure it out on their own? Have they actually gone the other way in whatever the situation is, and actually parents have ended up almost smothering them and trying to protect them over everything? There's no right or wrong in a sense, because parents are doing the best they can with the resources they have, right? So they're just trying to be the best parent they can be, and textbook, you might do it perfectly, but the way it's being received from the child and their experiences and the way they're thinking about the world, it can create these false senses of attachment. So we end up becoming maybe hypervigilant because of certain situations in our life. Maybe we start to avoid certain things because that's what we learned to do. That's what we modeled our parents doing. And then we start to then feed that into our own relationships with stuff in the world.
Yeah.
So for me, I learned very early on that I need to be highly aware of my surroundings. There was an anxiety element. And also that I modeled really that I needed to avoid certain situations as well. So for me, I took that high anxiety into my life kind of unknowingly, because it's what I'd always known, right? Because someone tells you the sky's blue, right? So the reality is I took that high anxiety combined with this need to avoid. So I went straight in, throw everything into work mode, right? Everything into excessive work. And I ended up avoiding the very things that needed my attention, right? Like my emotions, like the quality of my thoughts. So that's just my example, and everybody's different. But it's those attachment styles that really start to play the part.
Yeah, and then you have to work through the techniques to let go, heal, and move forward in life.
Exactly.
So you gave some tips. You gave 3 key tips for sort of grounding yourself and make yourself more soothing. Soothe. For people listening on a life perspective, we covered the root, covered the health. From a life practicality perspective, what are some, to finish this podcast up, what would be 3 key practical dealing with life stress tips that you help people kind of tackle that day-to-day?
3 key life stress tips. So I think one of the biggest ones that I learned going through is dealing with people is never go into any situation or any kind of conversation or anything tired, exhausted, or angry. is if you know you've got to deal with someone, or you're going to go into a situation that you know usually causes you stress, or you know you have to speak to someone that usually triggers you, or makes you feel not great, is take a few deep, slow breaths. And just one thing I say to myself, I never used to say, is just a deep breath, calm, and then go in. Whatever happens, I'm going to stay calm and know that however this person responds, it's not my fault. It's not their fault. It's just they're doing the best they can with what's going on in their life right now. So you kind of go to it with compassion. And I think that's a big thing that I think everyone can learn, is whatever situation you're going to in life, whether it's a relationship, a colleague, a family member, a loved one, whatever you're doing, is go into that with compassion for the person you're going to be speaking to, or the people you're going to be surrounding yourself with, because someone might snap at you, someone might say something that rubs you up the wrong way, but they're not doing it to be malicious or on purpose. It's just they're doing the best they can, and you can just go into that with a few deep breaths and go in with compassion. It's going to make your life much easier, and it's going to help you to understand other people better, and you're going to be able to show up in a much more resourceful way for them.
Yeah,
love it. I'm already breathing slower listening to this.
Yeah, slow breathing, it just calms everything down, and you see things differently.
Another really easy way to manage your state, right, which is what you're describing, is when we make the most of those transitional moments. So when you're finishing work and you're about to walk through the front door to see your family, is just before you walk through the front door, put yourself into that state first. Don't bring the charge from the day into the door, right? Stay for an extra minute in the car, listen to your favorite song, if that's the thing that shifts you into a state that's actually one that you desire. So that's the managing state. That definitely be the first tip. The second tip that I'd add here is being intentional. Being clear on who you are, who you're showing up as today. What is your highest intention? Because it's too easy for us to go through life mindlessly without really considering that. And that's usually when it causes us the most stress, because we end up maybe experiencing something that's in conflict with who we are, and we react to it, we get triggered by it, purely because we haven't been intentional with our own focus. Where are we placing our focus in a certain situation? How can I elevate this situation in a more resourceful way that's going to not stress me out and also not stress somebody else out? So being really intentional is really important as well.
How do you recommend people doing that?
Set an intention, decide, literally take a moment. And again, that could be sitting down and doing a meditation or really reflecting, or literally just deciding in the morning when you get up, what's your one word for the day? What are you going to just put into your day? What's the flavor that you're going to add, right? And just stay true to that. Even if you feel like you come off course a little bit, maybe you go into your work day and you feel like, okay, today I'm not going to get stressed out, I'm going to be calm. Even if something does trigger you or stress you out, come back to calm as quickly as you can. Come back to your word, come back to your anchor word, come back to your intention. That will help to just start to dissolve what you're experiencing.
I love it. Who got on, Jonathan?
I was just saying that two tips. That was two, yeah. So the third one, from a physical perspective, very quick and easy, 30 seconds. What animals do when they experience stress, shake it out. So if you're finishing work and you can just feel that heaviness before you, like Charlotte said, you go through the door, before you go into your next kind of phase of your day, is shake it out. Somatic response, literally just bounce up and down on the spot, shake your arms, shake your legs. If you want to make a sound, make a sound. And what happens is the body will physically release that electrical charge that's been building up from the stress you've been experiencing from whatever situation you've been in. Animals do it very, very well. They shake it off. Stress goes, nervous system calms down, and then let it go and carry on with it. They don't hold on to it. And as human beings, we need to learn to come back to that somatic state, that somatic response. Shake it out, let it go, and then trust me, after you do that for 30 seconds, you're going to feel so much better, and you're going to feel much lighter, and you're going to feel that heaviness what you felt before is going to just completely go.
Love it. Very, very practical, and definitely want to, if you listen to this podcast, give it a go as soon as you finish it. So where can people find out more about some of the amazing work you're doing, Jonathan and Charlotte?
Yep. So thewellnesstheory.com. And then on Instagram, we are at Wellness Theory. We have, if anybody's interested in that health level specifically that Jonathan described earlier, those 8 areas, we've got a little scorecard people can go and do, and they can score themselves and see how they're doing on those 8 areas. And then they get some personalized report and practical tactical videos on what they can do based on their score. So they really can see, okay, well, maybe my emotions need attention, maybe it's my movement, maybe it's my energy. They'll start to be able to really start to help their stress from that wellness health perspective from there. And then we've also got an event coming up in May, which is a kind of a Kickstarter workshop that's going to be helping people to get started on this journey. So if they feel like they've resonated with anything in this conversation today, or anything around stress and wellness combined, maybe that's anxiety, a racing mind, maybe it is tension and physical pain in the body they're experiencing, or they feel like they're out of control of emotions, this is the perfect thing for you to do and get started. It's a free workshop that we're going to be running in May.
Amazing. We'll put that all in the show notes, so definitely check it out. We've got some really cool resources, and these guys are experts in the stress management game. Thanks so much for coming on, Jonathan and Charlotte.
Thank you for having us.